following web link: www.city.vancouver.bc/Woodwards. I would now be pleased to address any questions that you have with any of the information presented to you today, noting that Council is scheduled to hear from the public delegations tomorrow at a specially convened Council meeting, which will undoubtedly raise further questions. Thank you for the opportunity to present this report to you today.
Thank you very much. And as you heard, we will start off tomorrow with our questions and then go to the public delegation. So thank you very much. Tomorrow, it starts at 2 p.m. The public, we will start and then the public will follow. If need be, we will break 6 to 7:30. Is that correct? We will break from 6 to 7:30 and then we'll start again at 7:30 and go on from there. We will now deal with Communication 1 before other reports. And Communication 1 basically is the schedule for the 2004, 2005 council meetings. Councillor Woodsworth.
I'd like to move that we accept the proposal for the following schedule of council meetings for 2005.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We will now move to those reports which we held for debate, separate vote, etc., etc. A1, Councillor Woodsworth.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at the report which is called Sport Event Hosting, and a recommendation that Council approve a $100,000 commitment to partner with the BC Housing Hosting Now program. And I just had a question for the city manager. In your comments, you say that this partnership will demonstrate Vancouver's commitment to facilitating and supporting high-performance sport events at a national, international level with a priority on pre-Olympics, Paralympics test events. At the same time, this initiative will bring the benefits associated with sports development, economic development, and social and community development to our city and complement the proactive role the city is taking in providing assistance and support in special events. And I wanted you to address specifically how this will ensure that these athletics are open to the development of youth, the Aboriginal community, and women.
How I will ensure that these events are open for Aboriginal participation, women's participation. I missed the last one, sorry.
And youth?
Oh, youth. Well, I think that part of the reason that we are working so closely, and I should turn to the authors of the report, Susan Mundick, the general manager, and Lori McKay, who's also been working on it, but suggest we know that has been Council's target. The following group have been meeting pretty regularly with the Legacies Now program, for whom those are target populations that we are looking towards adding events to as well. So I don't know, Susan, if you want to answer specifically those questions about how we're going to ensure it, but you've been working hard at it.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of Council. I appreciate the opportunity, first of all, to introduce Lori McKay, Director from Vancouver East and the Park Board, the author of the report, as well as Janice Cookson. And Janice is the Director for Sport Tourism of Legacy Now, which is an organization that's just starting to develop, so we're delighted to have Janice with us today. The intent of this is, of course, to encourage youth sport and the whole range of activities that will lead up into 2010. And the criteria that form part of the grant applications do emphasize and include many of the issues and topics that you suggested. So that process is ensured through the application process and through the granting of the grants.
Perhaps I could have a copy to take a look at.
Attached is the appendix, and I do apologize. Unfortunately, we were not able to get, at the time of publication, a computer copy, but I will send you an original, and if you read through, it is outlined in that area. Now, if there are some questions at that point, we would be glad to be more specific around some of the programs.
I'm just wondering how we can proactively encourage these groups, since it's a critical area of weakness in our sports development,
Yeah.
not just for Vancouver, but for the world.
One of the areas and one of the reasons why the task force that worked on this particularly liked partnering with this program is that this program, as well as assisting with financial grants to run an event, will also assist with the bid process. And often the groups need that assistance and support. So we're not only there as a financial resource, but we're there to assist get going and partnering and putting together the proposals. So I think it's through those two initiatives that we can probably do the best process. So your representative sitting on that committee can bring that perspective to the table as those grants are awarded.
Okay. I know that Legacies Now has been encouraging this development around the province, and certainly they were at UBCM discussing it. And I'm wondering how we're encouraging this in Vancouver, the city of Vancouver.
In terms of our priorities in granting permits, etc.
And letting people know that these grants are available and encouraging them to apply for them.
Once council gives us direction, then we will develop a communication strategy that will send this message out. We have already, and I think that Janice can probably elaborate, but we've already received our first round of applications. We were delighted. And Janice, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we had over 24 applications. We have reviewed them for a range of sports, a range of activities, and we've already began the process of looking at those 24. So the word is out in the sport community. The sport community is always eager and looks towards governments to assist them in that process. So what we will do is work through all of the sport organizations in the province of British Columbia to say, here we are, this is what we have to offer, put an application in and we'll do our best to find support for you.
And do those applications represent the diversity of Aboriginal youth and women's athletes?
At this particular point, I can say that I have sat in on the first process and the answer is yes, but we cannot be specific because we haven't finished the process of recommendation yet.
That's wonderful, thank you.
Your Worship, I have a couple of questions regarding the funding for this and the overall funding, perhaps. The funding for this project is coming out of the operating budget that we've allocated in preparation for the 2010 Olympics. But I'm wondering whether or not we could get an update in terms of what we allocated already and any other identified issues that are coming before us. Because we're making this decision in isolation from any other identified initiatives that might be coming, it seems. And that would mirror our property endowment fund, where issues come up one by one, and earlier this year we seem to have gotten into ourselves with a bit of some hot water, some people would say, but in fact everything turned out okay. But in this instance, I'm being asked to allocate some funding absent the full program.
One of the things in the identification of within the operating budget for the Olympic funds, and I am remiss in not being able to report to you the exact total, but we had allocated a fund of $600,000 for that. We have been not moving forward at a pace that I thought we would be in terms of spending that money. So there is adequate money to cover off this year and next year's spending of those funds, Councillor Louis, within this operating budget year, which will still leave us a bunch of money, and I could say $300,000 to $400,000 that I can't give you an exact total, and I am remiss in that. But I would say to you that as we move forward and we start to build the Secretariat, and I thought we would have begun that process earlier, which would have cost us a lot more than has been expended out of that operating line.
Aside from the actual amounts of money that have been expended or remaining in the account, so I'm looking for a program, I guess, of what possible expenditures there may be, or have we identified a number of initiatives that I could rank in terms of where I would put that money? Because normally if there's a budget, whether it be a cultural grants budget or
our community services budget, we have a certain amount of money, but it's always more money than, more requests than money that we have.
Let me just suggest yes. Once we know the extent of how we're going to build the Secretariat, build the support to the Olympics, I think I've shared certainly with the Mayor that we will be, the board will be going on a retreat, the Olympic board. We haven't set up the true kind of costs and the directions of where the city is going to go, and I don't believe that we'll be coming back with a report to you until November on those activities. That's not yet. I only know that in the context of the ranking, we know that the City of Vancouver is getting a lot of requests for sponsorship of sporting activities. It seems to me that it's important, given our target of women's development, youth development, sport development, that this is a pretty appropriate way for us to partner on the short term. I would not like us to think at the end of that a lot of our money, unplanned money, would go to supporting major sporting events down the road. This, for me, is a way to sort of balance off great draws on any Olympic reserves we have and allow us to invest our money in other appropriate activities related to culture, related to even more of the playground kind of activities that we came forward with earlier this year. So I feel pretty comfortable. You don't have the guarantee of that because we haven't put the plan together because we're still in the process of working with the new VANOC and seeing where exactly our best resources are being put. But I would suggest to you that we have been receiving lots of requests for our participation in sport development. And so I don't want to say, trust me, I'm a doctor. I really don't, because I've heard that a lot. But I would suggest to you that this is probably a wise investment and caps off our sort of vulnerability down the road.
All right then, thank you.
Yeah, looking at this report, looking at the categories and the types of events, the definition on page 5 and 6, what are major sporting events? And when I put my mind to this topic, I've come to the conclusion that the biggest benefit, ongoing benefit we can have at the city is from events that occur year after year. They're not a big one-time splash. They're events that we can grow from the ground up and turn into international events. And I think of, I mean, even the Sun Run is someone I'm familiar with, or the Vancouver Marathon, where we've grown it into an event of this kind of caliber, but it's locally grown, and it's ours, and it's only happening here, and it's every year. And I think there's a bigger payback from those ones than from a one-time blowout for some world championships that comes here, and we have to get all bent out of shape for one event, and then it's gone, and we have to create a whole other infrastructure for another event. So I just want to make sure that those are within our sights, and I'd like your assurance that those kind of events are somehow included in your criteria.
I'd like to try to answer that in two ways. First of all, the city is an active partner on the Sport Tourism Task Force. Councillor Ladner as well sits on that task force, and that's primarily what we're trying to do there. We're trying to look at mechanisms to develop large-scale events that deliver back not only to the economy of Vancouver, but certainly to the sport within us. And we have over 350 events right now that basically happen on park board properties, and in addition to that, about 250 that happen on cities. So that's what we're doing now, and we are looking to build those, and I think you're absolutely right, returning is the best appropriate direction. What has happened that has been different to the base of programs that we do now is that the interest has peaked on many sports that normally wouldn't think of coming to Vancouver. And that interest has peaked because of the Olympics, as well as we've made a commitment to sport development through our 2010 vision. And so we are now getting interest from a range of sport, both winter and summer, sport that traditionally haven't thought of us. And there needs to be a mechanism to work through and support those initiatives. We've made a commitment as part of our commitment to 2010 to develop sport and make sure that our young athletes, certainly in Vancouver, but I would spread that broadly to British Columbia, have a chance to try out the facilities, have a chance to be successful. And so what this does is allow Vancouver to be a partnership in that process, So it's not solving all of the problems, but I do believe it's a good effort towards a piece of the support that we need to do for sport.
Okay, I just want to keep an eye on the ones that are coming from the bottom up that involve the community and can get to that level with this kind of support, with this one-time opportunity of the Olympic exposure.
And I think that we've continued to do that and will do so. If you've noticed as well, we're still reporting back on opportunities for celebrations, opportunities for support around events that happen to coincide at the same time, like a parade coincides with a major event. So yes, I think we are working on those policy issues as well, and you will hear further later in the year on those issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Could I have a motion? Councillor Woodford. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. A2, Councillor Cadman.
I'd like to move City Council appoint 2 members of Council, Councillor Ladner and Councillor Lewis, as liaisons to the Vancouver Food Policy Council.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. A4, Councillor Bass.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have several questions of staff. Right. First question is, we're paying $10,000 for a credit debit card service. And I'm wondering, does the city have some arrangement with a bank so that we don't have to pay $10,000 every time we need credit card coverage?
Yes, my name is Glenn Richmond. I'm the manager of the False Alarm Reduction Program, incidentally. To answer your question, that number is based on 2% per transaction. It's a bit of a gray area because we're assuming that the revenues that we're going to collect, between 25 and 50% will use that service. So that 2% is actually a standard.
Oh, that's a variable cost.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Second question is that on the second page it says that it dropped down the number of false alarms. We're talking about security system false alarms that result in false alarms to the police. It says that it dropped down to 15,850 the last time, I think it was last year, and that amounts to about 45 per day. And I'm wondering, I didn't see anywhere in here the cost of those calls. Did I miss that?
No, you didn't, because the short answer on that is it depends. It depends on what you want to factor into it as far as wages, time, and what we call CAT hours on a call, and the annual cost of false alarms will vary between $375,000 to $1.8 million, depending on what you want to factor in.
Wow.
It's a lot of money.
And from 275 to 1.8, so when you talk about the business case, I was looking for that, so what's the savings cost? That's a fourfold variable, bit of variation, 375 to 1.8.
Yeah, the truth is probably somewhere in between. I think if you base it on CAT hours, it comes down to about 1.1, 1.2 million, which is incidentally the revenues that the false alarm reduction programs generates each year. So we're pretty much at a break-even point.
Okay. So, okay, I was wondering about that. Next question is, let me read this to you. The proposed amendment is on page 3 towards the bottom. The proposed amendment to what we're doing places greater responsibility on the alarm monitoring company to actually make contact with a key holder, permit holder, that is the property reference, prior to contacting the police. Mm-hmm. Now, does that mean there's going to be a longer time for the police to respond?
It could, however, with today's technology in the monitoring stations, they literally hunt and peck for a phone number. The computer auto dials it for them. So we're talking seconds here between looking at a list and actually going down it to make contact with different people.
And then, so we're not leaving the company hunting around for somebody before the police is called.
No, what we're trying to build into this, in fact, is to make sure that the alarm companies and the alarm users maintain up-to-date lists, so the alarm company has, at a touch of a finger, basically contact with somebody related to that property.
Okay. And then the last thing was, are these systems ever inspected? You know, like the fire prevention people inspect fire alarms. Is there any point in inspecting these so as to cut down the false alarm rate?
When an alarm system or alarm user is deemed to have excessive false alarms prior to reinstating their permit, we actually have them inspect their alarm systems. We recommend, just caveat emptor, buyer beware, we recommend that folks have their systems inspected once a year, but that's not always the case. Just like changing your batteries in your smoke alarm is not always the case.
So whose responsibility is that?
It's the alarm user. It's their system. It's up to them to maintain it.
And they pay for it.
Right. And when they enter into a contract with a monitoring company or alarm company, it all depends on the arrangement that they've made with that company.
Okay. I'm happy. I would have appreciated that range of the cost of the false alarms, but given that it's almost the same as what we're recovering in fees, that makes me very happy. I'd like to move this.
Councillor Louis first.
Your Worship, I have a couple of questions regarding the number of premises that we come across per year that we discover with no permit.
I couldn't give you an exact number, although I can tell you that we're sitting at about 58,000 permits now. We grow at about 2,500 per year, but I would rather suspect there's in the neighborhood of 10 to 20% that people just don't know they have to get a permit. So I think most people are innocently ignorant, that they don't realize that this is the situation, and this is part of the communication plan, wanting to make sure those folks know what their responsibility is.
And when we discover them, do we fine them on the first offense?
No, what we in fact do is we issue them a temporary shadow permit because we know that they in fact now have a system, and we send them a letter and giving them opportunities to rectify the situation.
Okay, so that was my concern, that some people may not in fact know, and the way it reads that anybody that contravenes this bylaw would get a fine, and it's quite a substantial fine. The other portion of it was on completion of a 12 consecutive month with 0 alarm incidents. Isn't it a rolling time bar in terms of if you have currently 4 incidences within a 12-month period, then your alarm is canceled?
Right. The 12-month is in fact a rolling scale. It's based on the anniversary date of the permit, so it depends on when they take it out. That 12 months begins from their last alarm incident, and that just keeps rolling.
So but the report isn't quite accurate then when it says that upon completion of a 12 consecutive months with 0 alarms reported to Vancouver Police, the permit status will revert back and the subject level 1 reinstatement fees. So it's not that they don't have incidences over that period of 1 year that exceed now 3 if we pass this.
What that's referring to is there's basically 2 levels of reinstatement fees. On the first, as an example, I'll take residential. On the first offense, as it were, of having excessive false alarms, they will pay a $75 reinstatement fee. If it happens on a second occasion, meaning a further 4 false alarms, they would pay $150. Now, having said that, if they've been good for that 12 months, if they've had no further false alarms, what we're saying here is we want to give them a reward, as it were, for fixing their situation and bringing them back to a level 1 reinstatement versus a level 2. That's what that means.
Okay, no, I understand now.
Right.
It's two separate incidents of 4
Correct.
events.
Correct. When we reinstate the fees, by the way, we zero their account. So although we've noted that it's occurred, they start with a clean slate when they reinstate their permit.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion by Councillor Bass. Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. A6, Councillor Louis.
Your Worship, this is this is regarding a housing agreement for 663 Gloria Avenue, and there's a question regarding the term of the agreement, which is 15 years. and I see the definition of seniors is 60 plus. What happens to the seniors at the end of this 15-year agreement? I'm assuming quite a few of them, I'm hoping, quite a few of them will still be alive at 75. I'm wondering whether or not the term is in fact long enough, but if there's no opportunity to adjust the term, then what happens to these seniors at 75 years of age? Because it would seem that quite an upheaval that they've been living at a premise for 15 years.
The period of 15 years was selected because that reflects the value of the relaxation that we are giving them. It was also a period of time that was negotiated and agreeable to the owner. As far as what would happen to the tenants after that, they would be subject to, I guess, a rent increase. That would be the one of the things that possibly that could happen. That they would be required, the landlord would be required to give them adequate notice that the rent increase was coming, and the tenant would then have to adjust to it. In terms of, it would continue to be a rental building, so they wouldn't leave because it was stratified.
But wouldn't the rate increase be quite substantial if we're no longer...
Sorry?
Wouldn't the rate increase at the end of the term be quite substantial? And because we've seen other instances where seniors just can't afford to pay the rent when it becomes full market.
I think it's really hard to predict what the rents would be at the end of the 15-year period. It really will depend on what the market is and what is elsewhere available in the area.
There's not much we can do, then is that what you're saying?
I think that this actually provides a significant public benefit in that we do have assurance that for 15 years we're going to have rental housing in the Chinatown area, which is something we're trying to encourage. Market rental housing, but it's at an affordable rate, and it is something that is for at least 15 years, and that's actually quite a considerable period of time. There is a question of what happens at the end of it, but in terms of it being something that is, it reflects the value of what the person is, the applicant is getting in return of getting a parking relaxation. So it reflects that, the quid pro quo.
No, I understand the issue of negotiating and how we came to these terms. It's that currently it's the seniors that occupy these spaces or will occupy these spaces. It's that the percentage is that it should not be over 30% of their total income in order to qualify and move into these places. But if that's their income at 60, I suspect that they'll be limited, if any, opportunities at 75 to make any adjustments to their income. And at that time, then what happens to them when they can't pay the rent? Because if they're already at 30%, then it eats into their food allowance or any other funding that's available to them. And I'm wondering whether or not we should make some modifications, if we can, in terms of negotiations for a longer term, because the average age is over 75 years of age now, it seems, of life expectancy.
Well, I guess that's all I can say in terms of negotiating a longer term is that we certainly tried to get the maximum amount of public benefit that we could in this negotiation with the owner. And I'm not at all confident that if we were to go back and say we need a longer time period that we would actually be successful in getting that. I think we feel that actually from the public point of view, in terms of what we've got, a quid pro quo, we're doing very well from a public point of view. This is a significant public benefit considering what the parking relaxation is.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Woodsworth?
I presume that the SAFER will increase in the case that the councillor is concerned about and enable them to meet that increase in rent.
Yes, I hope you're right that SAFER will increase, and in fact that's one of the recommendations that we'll be bringing forward to council as part of the homeless plan.
Yes. any senior who is in need of financial assistance for rent can apply for SAFER from the provincial government. My other question was, I'm assuming that given the need for seniors for housing in the Downtown East Side, that Downtown East Side seniors will be given a priority for these units, or how will seniors apply for them?
Well, this is a designated senior building, so only seniors age over 60 who are in receipt of SAFER can apply to live in this building.
I understand, but will the seniors be seniors who are presently living in the Downtown East Side?
We don't have that requirement in the agreement. But given that the property owner is a Chinese owner and is situated in Chinatown, I would hope that the seniors living in the area will have the priority. But it's not one of the conditions of the housing agreement.
I see. And can we put conditions like that on the agreement?
Because it has been negotiated and agreed and decided by both the city and the property owner's lawyer, so I don't know how much success we will have to go back and renegotiate the agreement, and I don't know if we are really in a, legally we are in a position to do that.
In that particular area, the Downtown East Side, there are a significant number of seniors, and there are some seniors facilities, but it would be good to hear if this is something that he would be amenable to.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Perhaps what we can do is when we talk to the applicant, we can mention to him that this is a concern and see what he can do to make sure that he does take first account of the people in the area.
Thank you very much.
I think Councillor Woodward was on the right track there. You know, we did pass a motion recently that any people who were relocated would have first choice for housing that came up, and I realize this is different because we're getting a new product on the market, but I think that policy should be there. It should be for local people, and there's 2 or 3 hotels near there that are crammed full of Chinese Canadian seniors that you know, I would certainly want them to get first choice rather than maybe someone coming from Surrey or somewhere else, and it should be targeted toward the local people. And I would suggest it would be a very good thing to go back and get that kind of agreement. And I couldn't understand why a developer who would be negotiating in good faith wouldn't just accept that. So could we get a report back on how that goes? And the other thing is you're specifically targeting older seniors. I mean, Downtown East Side is 55 for BC Housing, right? So, not for BC Housing. But yeah, but for BC Housing, which is the one that we negotiated some years ago, it's 55. But you're saying 65, so you can take advantage of 60, so you can take advantage of SAFER.
Yeah, it's age 60 because exactly the reason you mentioned SAFER.
I'm not seeing it. What's wrong? What the hell's going on?
Motion moved by Councillor Louis. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. A7, Councillor Green.
This is exactly one of the hotels that we're redoing, and I'm obviously going to move support for it. There are a couple of issues, though, that I wanted to bring up in terms of lowest bid. The difference appears between the two to be about $11,000 on a $3.3 million contract. And again, I question if we're getting the best value when we're going lowest bid. Or are we actually going lowest bid?
Well, policy really is best value. In this case, it so happens the best value is the lowest bid. We've been finding actually that most of the bids recently have been very, very close within 10,000 of these large numbers. I think it's just the way the market is. And this particular contract, in fact, has worked for us into the central residence and performed satisfactorily. We had no complaints about it.
So we are, in fact, using best value, not lowest bid, just going on lowest. Okay. And in that best value, do we examine the aspect of local hiring, such as the Blade Runner program?
We have not in this particular case. It was not a requirement in the tender document. But we could inquire about it and see whether inside the contract we can.
Okay, I don't know if I need to move a motion that we look at that in the future or not. Maybe I should. Would I be out of order if I moved a motion here?
Perhaps it'd be better if you brought it back and we put it in through the system rather than...
Okay, I'll do that.
This is a general comment. We are presently looking at our whole tendering process, purchasing process, and I think at that time that might be best to, if we are in fact going to consider something like that included.
Okay, hang on until I get this motion through.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Bass?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question. The bid was $3.298 million, and we said there should be a contingency of $350,000. But we're asked to pass $4.25 million, which in my arithmetic is a contingency of $952 million, not $350 million. Would you explain that?
Your math is correct, but the 4.2 is the total project cost. It's hard and soft cost. It includes all the design costs involved, furniture, other subcontracts that we have for demolition.
Okay. I don't see that in here.
The breakdown was not included in this one. It was in an earlier report, but I do have a breakdown if you're interested in getting the total breakdown of your project.
Okay, I'm happy. Thank you.
That's always
Councillor Green?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm sorry, I just had one other point. The other thing that I brought up, and I think it's underway, is when we do a project like this, you know, it says City of Vancouver is still there, but it doesn't tell people what we're doing. And I believe we are getting some signage to let people know that this is not a derelict building, that this is something that's positive for the neighborhood.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan?
I wanted to ask about the this building on 1200 Granville. Basically, we had 100 units of 100 square feet, and now we're ending up with 82 units of 160 square feet. So it is quite small units and I'm just wondering, it looks like you were able to include a washroom and a small kitchen, which is quite remarkable to do in such a small space. So there must have been some very clever architecture going on here, or interior designing. So I congratulate you to be able to. Are you comfortable that this will be adequate space for people to live in?
It's a new makeover show.
Yes, definitely. We are. It is 160 square feet. People will have a shower, a toilet, a hand basin. There'll be a cooking area for people, as well as a living, sleeping area. So it will be very compact, but it will provide people with the basic essentials of being able to cook and have their own bathroom, which every time we talk to people, low-income people, they say having their own bathroom and being able to cook is so essential to their quality of life. And that's a big improvement over having previously it was a smaller space of only 100 square feet, but there was just sleeping area. There was no cooking or a toilet. So we are very confident that this will provide a much increased quality of life for the people who are living there.
Will we be doing follow-up to ask, to evaluate whether this is indeed adequate for them?
Most definitely, and I think that's one of the advantages is that the city is going to be managing this project, so we'll be able, our non-market housing department will be able to get direct feedback on an ongoing basis, as well as, I think your suggestion is a good one, is that we actually monitor them, in a formal way on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Councillor Green? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. A8. Councillor Bass. Hold on here, I'm getting to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question about this. This is a form of development of VGH, and my question is on page 3. It says on September 7, 2004, VGH began demolition of a women's residence at 2740 Heather Street to provide replacement open space in response to development of the site. My question is, when we take down a residence like that, is there an evaluation, two Two questions. One, is there an evaluation of the sustainability of taking down a major building like that? And secondly, do we take it down in a way that maximizes the recycling of the materials in the building?
The demolition that is occurring on that site is an obligation that the hospital has to the city to replace open space. So they're doing that at our request.
I know.
Frankly. And it's a matter of the limitation on the number of buildings that are available to be removed from the site, really. This obligation was created at a point where we weren't doing an evaluation for sustainability per se. The building would have been evaluated for things like heritage merit and things like this in the process. But in terms of the effect of demolishing the materials in the building, no, that wouldn't have been considered at the time that that obligation was created. However, during the course of that policy process and rezoning, one of the things that we did encourage was the recycling of the nurses' residence for that very reason. And that is coming before you at public hearing on Thursday evening with a successful proposal to recycle the majority of the building. So there have been instances where we have succeeded in doing that. In this particular instance, we would have to have given up our expectation of replacement open space in order to do something else with that building. At the time of that policy process and rezoning, that wasn't considered to be as important as replacing the open space.
And that expectation of that location was specified at that time as opposed to elsewhere on the site?
No, the location was not actually specified. It was asked that the hospital come forward with a proposal to create a replacement open space that was of a comparable scale. They came forward with that as the only possible location that they could free up at this time.
So it was their choice. Does council... How come council doesn't have a voice in that in terms of why don't we approve that?
Council passed a resolution at the time of the rezoning requiring them to come forward with a replacement open space, and at the time there was not a desire expressed to specify which site that should be on.
Right. Okay, so there aren't too many examples of where this might happen again, but I wouldn't think, but that's something we might think about in the future in terms of taking a building and then creating space. What about the recycling of the materials in this building?
I could let the hospital representative speak to that. One thing I should point out with this site is that this is also a long-term redevelopment site for a future medical technology research building. So ultimately, this site was going to be cleared for development. It is providing interim open space until the major pieces of open space are created through further recycling of site. But the hospital could speak to the recycling question.
Thank you.
Barry Pierce, the Executive Director of Facilities Development for Vancouver Coastal Health. We looked at the building we're referring to as the women's residence on Heather, and it's basically a concrete construction and a fair amount of asbestos in the building, so any of the recycling of that building was not worth pursuing.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll move the motion.
Thank you. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Rise from Committee of the Whole. Councillor Louis, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Adopt the report of the Committee of the Whole. Moved by Councillor Stevenson, second by Councillor Louis. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We have bylaws 1 to 8 on the agenda for consideration by Council. Council may adopt the bylaws collectively in a single motion. Does any member wish to have any of the bylaws for debate or held? Does any member wish to hold any of the bylaws for debate, separate vote, or because of conflict of interest? I will accept a motion from Councillor Bass as Deputy Mayor. Now. Not be eager. You'll have a chance to be Deputy Mayor someday.
Yeah. I think that's made him faster.
That's when his hair grows back.
I move that the council, except for those members excused as noted in the agenda, vote to enact the bylaws listed in the agenda for this meeting as numbers 1 to 8 inclusive, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign and seal the enacted bylaws.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Bylaw 1, a bylaw to amend fire bylaw number 8191 regarding fees and fines. 2, a bylaw to amend fire bylaw number 8191 regarding fireworks and open fires. 3, a bylaw to amend street name bylaw number 4054, re-addition to Bridgeway and Cooperage Way and extension of Spice Street. 4, a bylaw to amend noise control bylaw number 6555, re-1475 Howe Street. 5, a bylaw to amend noise control bylaw number 6555, re-745-749 West 42nd Avenue, and 5816 to 5818 Tisdale Street. 6, a bylaw to amend noise control bylaws number 655, re-5312-5392 Oak Street. 7, a bylaw to enact a housing agreement for 663 Gore Avenue. 8, a bylaw to authorize council entering into a heritage revitalization agreement with the owner of heritage property 6135 McDonald Street. We have 5 motions on notice before us. Motion number 1, Councillor Green.
This is a motion called Encouragement and Protection of Economic Sustainability in Vancouver, and it reads as such: whereas Vancouver prides itself in showing leadership as a sustainable city seeking economic, social, and environmental sustainability as 3 critical pillars of its development, and whereas a recent study by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities on the quality of life in Canadian municipalities showed an increasing polarization of income in Vancouver, with most Vancouverites experiencing no income growth in the past decade, and the gap between rich and poor expanding at twice the national rate. And whereas equitable distribution of income is critical to the city's sustainability, and whereas providing access to decent paying jobs is the best way to ensure all citizens have a fair opportunity to participate in the wealth generated in the city, therefore be it resolved that this council go on record as committing themselves to encouraging job creation and protecting existing jobs as a key objective of city policy, and be it further resolved that council asks the city manager to take additional steps to set out the economic and job-related aspects of major decisions coming to council. So I'd like to speak on that, Your Worship.
Could we have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Louis. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
What do you mean?
Speak.
Thank you. As we've heard here today, I mean, we have a lot of projects that are going on in the city, and my fear is that we are losing jobs to people who are coming from elsewhere and taking those jobs, and sometimes, and I have no problem with that as long as the people in our communities have a right to those jobs first. It's their community, it's where they live, and they're impacted by them. So what we're looking at is situations such as in the tendering process that we've seen today, to look at ways in which we can make sure, especially the youth and people of Downtown Eastside First Nations people, such as the Blade Runner program, have the opportunity to get involved in those jobs. We've seen it happening with, recently, we passed a motion for the casino at Edgewater that it would hire locally, and they're going through that process right now, and that's going to be one of the first ones to see how it works out for the people of that community. We also were able to negotiate with the expansion of the Trade and Convention Center a similar kind of agreement for local hiring and local procurement as we have with the Olympics. So we have local hiring and local procurement as priorities. I should also point out that all 3 developers on the Woodward site were asked to give how they were going to use local suppliers and local people, local workers. The issue, too, is social sustainability, it's economic sustainability, and it's environmental sustainability. The more local products that we can use that are manufactured and delivered in a location close to us, the better it is for the environment. And certainly those products often fit that environment better. So I hope we can all agree that this is a motion that should be a direction to council and staff is how we view the future of our city. Thank you.
Councillor Ladner.
Your Worship, I'd like to commend Councillor Green's initiative on this, and I think this is a very important issue, the inequitable distribution of income. And I, too, was quite shocked by that report that the vast majority of people in Vancouver are not increasing their income. But I would like to take issue with him on his proposed solution. And he was speaking to local procurement and local hiring. I don't see anything about that here. I see us being asked to commit ourselves to encouraging job creation and protecting existing jobs. And to me, those two things are working at cross purposes, because the only power that we have as a council to protect existing jobs is to never try to get any efficiencies at City Hall. We should be going back to digging ditches with human beings rather than with machines, because we can create and protect a whole lot of jobs. And I don't think this is the way to go. I think that you have to be constantly looking out for how we're spending our money. We are spending money in the public sector, and we are taking money from taxpayers. I think we owe them the most efficient city services, and I think we owe our workers the opportunity to be working efficiently rather than being in some kind of feather-bedding job that we're protecting because we want to protect a job. So I want to propose an amendment. Oh, no, I also want to comment on Councillor Green's issue about local hiring, and I don't know whether that's implicit in this or, well, it's not explicit, but I'm always concerned when he talks about local hiring and people coming from elsewhere. How would you define an immigrant other than somebody coming from elsewhere who's arrived here and wants to work here? And do those people not get jobs because they don't live in the downtown east side, or they haven't grown up here? Or how do you define local? And how do you deal with people who are employers and people doing projects, including the city, who have can't find people to do the jobs because there's a skills shortage? If anybody's been watching the workplace out there will know that in many areas there aren't local people available to do a lot of these jobs, and the projects won't continue if you can't hire wherever you can find people. So I want to suggest an amendment to strike the words "and protecting existing jobs" and add the phrase, well, I'll read the whole thing. Resolve the council go on record as committing itself to encouraging job creation through shifting the tax burden off commercial and industrial properties as a key objective of city policy. Because to me, that's the way you create jobs. You take the load off the job creators, the private sector, the people who are paying the big taxes. They stick around, they create jobs, and everything works out well, rather than us saying, let's make sure that nobody gets fired from the city.
Could you just repeat that again? So I didn't get it written down.
You may have been distracted with one of your...
well, I was going in such a circle there so fast that I came back up behind myself.
Okay. Face forward and pay attention.
Okay.
This council go on record as committing itself to encouraging job creation through shifting the tax burden off commercial and industrial properties as a key objective of city policy. To my mind, that is the best thing that we can do to create jobs and create some economic activity and work towards... we're actually, Councillor Cadman, if I may engage...
No, we're not having a little debate here, no.
If anybody thinks this is about...
It's a new year, new rules.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll address this to you. If anybody thinks this is about raising property taxes, I would remind them that we are about to be flooded with a whole lot of outside money from gas revenue, from provincial largesse and all other kinds of sources, gambling money, and we will have the opportunity to take the burden off job creators and not shift it to somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, okay, now we're on the amendment here, Councillor Roberts.
Okay. First, I'm going to compliment Councillor Ladner for taking a really fine, upstanding motion and able to distort it into an NPA rant about tax shifting and putting more taxes on the residential sector so that the commercial sector has less to pay. Quite remarkable leap. If I did a same kind of leap like that in discussing your amendment, I'd be on to wards in just a second. But I'm going to stay focused on on the debate.
Thank you, Councillor.
And simply say that this is just totally off the topic and not dealing with the very real issue of how this council not only creates and protects jobs, but provides job opportunities for those that need it the most. And I have an amendment to this motion as well, and once I think this is defeated, I'd like to have the opportunity to make that amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan. On the amendment.
On the amendment, I support the amendment. This is, I think, recognizing the reality that it isn't governments that create and save jobs. It is, in fact, the marketplace. The marketplace is responsible for the success of our economy, and I think if we recognize that, we would actually achieve that goal. I think our role as government is to create a good environment. To create an environment that business can succeed and be healthy with. It's not our role to pick and choose which businesses, which jobs. And what I'm worried about is this is sort of taking us into that area where it's quite thoroughly discredited over the last 100 years of governments attempting to choose which jobs are good and which jobs aren't, which industries should succeed, which shouldn't. And I think that is taking us down a very dangerous path, and I think the amendment would be a good way to get us out of that. Thank you.
We're moving along so well, too. Councillor Louis. Oh, I'm sorry. You know, you give me 1 month off, and there you go.
There we go. Well, you're absolutely correct, Your Worship. We were doing very well. We started an hour late, and we're almost wrapped up in record time. And then we had Councillor Ladner making, at least I thought initially, some rather good points. How would you deal with the question of an immigrant? And would you bring that immigrant away simply because you have a policy for local employment? And Councillor Ladner took what, at least initially, seemed to be a rather interesting argument, and he threw it all away. Threw it in the trash bin by moving an amendment that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Take a moment, Your Worship, to look south of the border. We have somebody there who wasn't elected president. He delivered the largest tax cut ever in the history of the nation, and there's not been a single job created.
This is on the amendment.
Well, Councillor Badner's amendment is that you create jobs by cutting taxes. And all the empirical data worldwide is exactly the opposite. And if Councillor Badner would read The Economist, which, by the way, the taxpayer pays for so that he can read it, we know that you don't create jobs by cutting taxes. If that was the case, we have had a huge increase in jobs and in employment in the province of British Columbia. The most irresponsible tax cut ever in the history of this province, delivered by the former leader of his party, former leader of the MPA, Gordon Campbell, provincial premier, the most irresponsible and enormous tax cut ever delivered in the history of this province, and not a single job created because of it. You know what creates jobs, Your Worship? Take a look at what we just talked about an hour ago. Woodwards. We didn't create Woodwards or move ahead with Woodwards by offering a tax cut. Councillor Green recognized an issue that needed to be worked on, picked up the ball and ran with it. And I would suggest that there will be more jobs created in the redevelopment of Woodwards than have ever been created in any term in any city council here at 12th and Canby, ever. More jobs from that one development. Not by reckless, irresponsible tax cutting, but by recognizing what needs to be done and doing it. So, Councillor Wagner, your argument, at least initially interesting. The amendment absolutely confounds me, and I'll have to vote against it.
Councillor Louis.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Ladner's motion may in fact have some merit, but Councillor Ladner fails to realize that over a year ago now I asked for a report from city staff asking for a definition of why we have our current tax structure here in the city of Vancouver, why we have this ratio between business and residential. If Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Ladner had their way, the citizens of Vancouver, the residential tax homeowners, would have been paying would have had a tax increase of over 7% and 8% respectively on the previous 2 years, because they wanted to transfer a significant portion of the commercial tax onto the residential tax, residential homeowner. And here's another instance where they're doing it again, absent policy, absent the hard data on why that should be appropriate. So I would suggest to Councillor Ladner, if in fact that's what you want to do, which is increase the residential homeowner taxes, that at least wait for the report that staff are working on.
Councillor Green, on the amendment.
On the amendment, Your Worship, thank you. Again, Councillor Ladner, I thought he started out pretty good too for a second there, but you know, when you talk about protecting jobs, the NPA would see that, first of all, as a very negative kind of thing to do, because what you want to do is slash and burn. And that's what we've seen over and over again with the past leader of the NPA, as pointed out earlier, Gordon Campbell. Feather bedding is not anything that any trade unionist or any worker has ever wanted to do. That's something that was put in contracts at one time to stop the elimination of certain positions, and it was basically on railroads. But it's not something that I am talking about in here at all. It's, again, a red herring. I'll give you an example of protecting existing jobs. We're starting to lose some of our jobs in the film industry. And if you'll remember, a few months ago, I put forward a motion that I think passed unanimously, I may be incorrect, that we urged the provincial government to look at getting rid of the provincial sales tax on the film industry in order to give them a competitive edge. So I think that that's the way we look at whatever creative method we have, right, for maintaining jobs. And in that particular case, I think you're right. But the policy isn't to attack workers and say that we're trying to give them jobs that don't exist, or to say that when workers are not properly trained and not available, that you can't hire from elsewhere. The program that I'm basing this on is the FOTA program out of Portland, Oregon, and you look at first opportunities. But I want to say one other thing about the immigrant issue. Absolutely, immigrants are people who we all know, I believe we all know, are absolutely essential to our economy and who we are as Vancouverites. I mean, the average person in this city was born outside of Canada. So we have to keep that in mind. We have to do everything we can to make sure that their skills transfer into the workplace. But, you know, when I worked in the shipyards, we had a problem that the union had, and that was trying to get the company, Canron at that time, to train local people as apprentices. And we would fight them to the death, and we really could not get over the minimum. Then when we had hit a big job like SimCrude or something like that, we would bring in 200 people from Glasgow to work those jobs who were trained. So what I'm saying is, yes, immigrants make this population...
Fine city.
Excuse me?
A fine city, Glasgow.
It's a fine city, and I have to say, the lads that came over turned that around, and we won the apprenticeship position. We need immigrants, absolutely, and we need to promote immigration, and we need to promote people in the local areas getting jobs. An example, we've asked our engineering department to work with Ken Leotier from United We Can, who have people there who are trained in lane cleaning to bring them the next step into the city workforce. And that's exactly what we're looking at, giving people opportunities in local areas, oftentimes who haven't had it before.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts? No? Okay. Councillor Stevenson, on the amendment.
Thank you, Worship. Several times over the past couple of years, Councillor Sullivan has told us that the government's role, the role of government, is to create an atmosphere for business where business can flourish. That seems to be his sole understanding of what government's all about. In other words, we're to be handmaidens for business and solely for business and practically do nothing else. Whatever we need to do to make sure that business flourishes, that's our job. Well, I think most of us disagree with that. We see the role of government as much larger than simply that as a handmaiden for business. This amendment that Councillor Sullivan is arguing in favor of may have some merit, but it doesn't have any merit here. We need to take this as a motion in and of itself at some other time and then wait for the report as Councillor Louis has suggested, and then deal with it then and have a good discussion, but not get it caught up in this particular motion now. So I would speak strongly in opposition to this amendment and then go on to vote for the motion itself.
Well, I just really find it really quite disappointing. I thought we were going to actually get through an agenda here and get out in time.
Silly man.
And then Councillor Ladner has to throw the old red herring out here by bringing in his hobby horse. But I think it's time that people actually look at what Councillor Ladner and Councillor Sullivan have consistently proposed. It's not simply to reduce the taxes on business, as he presents in this amendment, but in fact to shift the taxes. To shift the taxes to the property owners. And consistently, Councillor Ladner and Councillor Sullivan would have us raise the taxes on the property owner by 7 and 8%, given the amendments that they've proposed. The implications of that, of course, being that then they could say, well, COPE has raised property taxes. But it's their initiative each and every time. They essentially want to shift the taxes off of the business interests and on to the property owners. And I can't support this amendment, and I really wish, you'd be a little less brash and bold in representing your business interests. Thank you.
I wasn't going to get drawn into this. However, the only comment I have is that I too would like to see business taxes cut. And I sincerely wish that the MPA had not installed the business taxes at a 5-to-1 level. Certainly we would never have done that had we had the opportunity. And so, as business knows, every time I talk to them, I'm trying to find out how other municipalities are able to get down to the level they are without putting the onus back on to yet another taxpayer within the city. So hopefully we will be able to achieve some of that. As you're aware, we tried that with the first budget. At the second budget, they asked if we would mind not doing that again because it ended up shifting more to them than it had an inadvertent effect. So I will be against this amendment, and Councillor Ladner, last chance.
Desperate last chance. It's funny to me, it strikes me as very odd that members of this council cannot make a connection between a high rate of taxation on an employer and that employer's willingness and ability to hire people. I mean, Councillor Green, excuse me, Councillor Stevens, Councillor Green it just admitted that if you want to encourage the film industry, you lower the taxes. So that's exactly what I'm suggesting. And to anybody who says I'm wanting to load up the residential tax base, I did not put that in here because I recognize we have a lot of money coming to us. We will have the opportunity to shift taxes without adding taxes to the residents. And we have lots of ambitious ways of getting money through raised parking fees and through gambling revenues and all kinds of things that will bring money into the city and money coming from other levels of government. So we can do this without sticking it to the residential taxpayers and get some jobs going in this city and help business create the jobs we all want. Thank you.
I have to weigh in again. First of all, the money coming from the province on traffic fines is designated for police. There's no option. Well, police and safety, but it's going towards police and safety. Okay. The money coming from the fuel tax is designated for transit. And the money designated from the slots from day one was not ever designated as tax relief. It was designated as money that would help our citizens. So I know that there's an idea out there that there's this huge amount of money that we're rolling down a hill, but it's all rolling into different streams. On the motion, on the amendment, all those in favor? Against? The motion is, or the amendment is defeated. Councillor Ladner and Councillor Sullivan oppose or for it. Sorry. On the regular amendment, Councillor Roberts.
Okay, I support the motion overall, and I wanted to add an amendment that I feel strengthens the motion and slightly fine-tunes the idea of providing jobs for local residents. And I wanted to add, be it further resolved that the city manager determine what special measures need to be taken to ensure equitable access for women and Aboriginal people and visible minorities. And what I'm doing here and wanting to add to it is that really came out of a trip to New York I took in the summer, and where unfortunately they are undergoing a massive reconstruction project where the World Trade Center stood. And one of the things the city of New York has done is try to ensure that women particularly, and also minority groups, have access to job training, particularly apprenticeship training. Councillor Green mentioned about the apprenticeship, and that women to attract enough women in to actually get the certification so that they could take access. And when I read about that was going on there, you know, I was reminded, although of course it's nothing on the scale of the World Trade Center reconstruction, but we have a massive amount of projects going on over this next period from here on through to the 2010 Olympics. And when Councillor Sullivan says that the private sector creates jobs and we should just sit back and let them get to work, I think of the Trade and Convention Center and what kind of construction work is generated out of that. I think of all the Olympic facilities, and which are all, of course, government funded and that or a government project, sponsored project. I think of Woodwards, of course, and the stimulation to the downtown east side. So in all these areas, I think one has to credit the public sector for the insight, the vision, the initiative to get this going. And I think indeed local residents do need, we do need care and be mindful that we do need everyone in our society to benefit from those. And so I think it would be good to also make a particular emphasis that women and visible minorities, Aboriginal people, are brought in to these jobs and given the skills and access so that they too can benefit.
Councillor Sullivan.
Well, I certainly do recognize that the government has a key role in the economy, and I don't want to leave the impression that I don't respect that the infrastructure, key investments in infrastructure, like the RAB line, for instance, is very, very important. I do find it very remarkable how Hope seems to have strayed so much from its roots to hear Councillor Cadman defending the bourgeoisie and the property owners, but that's wonderful. I think as we shift our political allegiances, that will happen. Now, I did want to make a reference to Councillor Lewis, who made a very cutting comment about reckless tax cutting and how Woodwards is a great example of government job creation. And in fact, Councillor Lewis might like to know that he was part of a council that did give significant tax relief to Woodwards, and that is one of the reasons that the developers are willing to go into that area, and they're going to do a great job, I'm sure. Thank you.
On the amendment, I'm sorry, Councillor Sullivan voted against that? Oh. On the amendment, all those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Green. You've got to get your light on.
Could I have the amendment read again? I didn't get to hear those.
Okay, we have further resolved that the city manager determines what special measures might be taken to ensure equitable access for women and Aboriginal people and visible minorities in relation to the job creation and job protection it was meant. So I think that's
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. That would be, seen as a
friendly amendment?
It was part of what it was there anyway.
So we'll consider that a friendly amendment?
Yes.
All right, on the motion. Seeing no further, all those in favor? Opposed? Opposed, Councillor Ladner, Councillor Sullivan. The motion passes. B2, moving right along here. B2, Councillor Lewis.
There's a lot of group of people. One of the spider might be deferred to not the next council meeting, which this is will correct me if I'm wrong, is next week. We don't have a skip week. So rather than to the next one, the one after that, that would be Tuesday, October the 19th.
Motion for deferral
To Tuesday, October the 19th.
to Tuesday, October 19th. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Bass. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. B3, Councillor Green.
I'll just read this out. This is a short one compared to the last one. The Mount Pleasant Pool. Whereas the Mount Pleasant Pool is well used and enjoyed public amenity of the Mount Pleasant area, therefore it be resolved that council requests staff explore with Vancouver Board of Parks and Recreations any options to retain the pool and report back to council with any possible opportunities to keep the pool open. Your Worship, I would say that...
Seconded by Councillor Lewis.
Okay, great. I would say that we should look at all aspects of this, including perhaps it going on the capital plan on the next referendum. I got contacted with people some months ago about this, and I've met with them several times. We've gone out to the pool. I think Councillor Lewis was there to an event they had recently, and it was a cold and clammy day, let me tell you, and the pool was full. You know, it was raining, but the pool was heated, and the kids were having a great time. It's really something that fits into our whole idea of getting youth ready for a healthier lifestyle, looking forward to the Olympics that's coming, and I think it's essential that we work with the park board to do our part to make sure that pool is not closed down. Thank you.
Well, Your Worship, as we get closer to October 16th, I do detect the councillors acting more like ward councillors. And this actually puzzles me because Councillor Green, the councillor for Strathcona Woodlands, is interfering in the ward of Councillor Lewis, and that just doesn't happen under the ward system. So we'll have to learn the etiquette around the ward system. That is one of the rules: is don't mess in my ward, I don't mess in your ward. Oh, Councillor Louis' ward. This is even worse. So they're seconded by Councillor Lewis.
Let's move this right along here, Councillor Sullivan.
We are right off of the
do you have a pool in Yaletown?
One of the great concerns that citizens expressed to me about the ward system, of course, is that
Councillor, this is on.
No, this is absolutely.
I know your mom is going to be angry at me for stepping in here, but
I know you accidentally will turn off my mic, Mr. Mayor, but I would like to just. It is very much related to where
Mr. Sullivan, I really like you, honestly.
I am about to make an amendment. I'm moving a motion here.
An amendment?
What we have here is councillors interfering in the area of the park board. This is the jurisdiction of the park board, and we're already taking over the park board. I mean, we got to recognize that even as a ward councillor, I think the commitment is that they are not going to get rid of the park board right away. But we shouldn't even do that before we get a ward system. Let's let the park board run the park board. And I would like to move that we refer this matter to the park board and get it right off off of council. I hear Councillor Green actually saying he wants to put this in the capital plan, which is another great worry, is that the ward councillors will always try to interfere with the capital plan.
Do you have an amendment there? I wasn't quite sure.
My motion is that we refer this to the park board and let them take care of park issues.
Is that an amendment? No, that would be a procedural motion.
So that's okay. I am moving a procedural motion, Mr. Mayor.
There's already a motion on the floor.
Can I get some? I can. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor,
do you have a seconder? Councillor Ladner. Hesitantly, Councillor Ladner seconded that motion. Councillor Ladner. No, this is on the new motion, yes. You're going to move. You're going to pass on that. Okay. Councillor Cadman, on the new motion.
I'm not speaking on that.
No, you don't need to speak. It's just a procedural motion.
Oh. Okay. Is there anything further on the procedural motion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is defeated. Councillor Ladner, Councillor Sullivan, in favor. Now, Councillor, we'll just move around here. I'll get back to you on that, okay? Councillor Cadman?
Well, I want to speak in favor of this motion. My partner happens to teach at Simon Fraser Elementary School. And I can tell you, for the kids in this neighborhood, that pool is their summer. Close that pool, and they lose their summer. It's absolutely critical that we keep that pool open because they don't have the means of transporting themselves to other facilities around this city. They live in that neighborhood, they go to school in that neighborhood, and during the summertime, this is their fun. This is their recreation. And it's absolutely critical that this pool be kept open. So I will support the motion.
Councillor Green?
I was going to talk to about Councillor Sullivan's slanted approach to the word system, but I think I'll let it
Thank
pass.
you.
Okay.
Councillor Ladner?
Well, I'd like to support Councillor Sullivan's comment that this is an uncalled for intrusion in park board matters. We have no jurisdiction over where pools are planned. The park board went through a very elaborate process of deciding which pools should stay and which should go, and I'm sure they measured the value of these pools to the wonderful children of Mount Pleasant. My kids swam in that pool when we lived near Mount Pleasant. I love the pool myself, but I don't think it's my business to get involved in this shameless pandering to public opinion about how lovely the pool is. When the park board is in charge of this, we give them a budget, we give them direction and authority, let them decide, and let's respect their wisdom.
Thank you. Councillor Green?
Yes, thank you. That was a point I did mean to bring up. I'm sorry. If you read the motion, it says that the council requests staff to explore with Vancouver Park Board any options. And, you know, the reality is I'm the last person that wants to stomp on the park board. I did have, in one of the meetings I had, I was joined by Heather Deal from the park board. And another one, I had long discussions with Eva Rickius from the park board over it. They're very aware of what I'm doing. And it's just, you know, when we look at the city and we let little things like jurisdiction that we can hide behind and say, oh, gee, I can't do that because it's the park board, and because the NPA park board made a decision that now we're trying to work our way out of to save that pool for kids of that neighborhood, I find it offensive to say that we cannot have a say on this. And I didn't say stomp up and down on top of the park board and do what council says. It says that we work with the Vancouver Park Board in order to find a solution to the pool.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Opposed, Councillor Sullivan. Oh. Wakey, wakey. Don't. B4, Councillor Sullivan. Let's go right to the therefore be it resolved.
I'll try to get right to the therefore be it resolved. Basically, as I've been talking with a number of citizens about the issue of the ward system and the at-large system, and there are some legitimate complaints about the at-large system. One of them is the large ballot, and it's been commented that there are a number of cities, at-large cities in North America, none of which have a large ballot. And so we started to do some research. Why is it that Vancouver does have the large ballot? And basically one of the concerns is, do we have to throw out a system that has served us so well just to achieve some small changes to our electoral system? And so what happened was we went into the past and we had in fact tried to change the rules around running for council. And one of the reasons we do have a large ballot is because it's so easy to get onto it. Any citizen in the city can get 2 signatures and get onto the ballot. And therefore we have Chiquita Banana and Dr. Evil, and I think I'm not supposed to say this one. I think it's supposed to be Skippy the Chimp or something like that. Anyways, the move to a ward system that we are planning, in fact, won't make a big difference to the ballot. The mayor, park board, school board, they're all going to be elected at large, so there will be a large ballot. But even if we do go to a ward system, you could still end up with a large ballot with all the frivolous candidates that could still get on. So I think this would be useful whether we go to a ward system or not. This would significantly reduce the number of people on the ballot, and all you have to do is, instead of requiring 2 people to sign your form, get 20 people to sign your form. And what I understand is that it's very much harder than most people realize to get 20 people to sign an official city document, especially when you think that the person is a frivolous candidate. So I think I noticed in the we did have a professor come recently, and we asked him about his city system, and they actually have 250 signatures required to get on a ballot. And so I think this would be a useful direction, whether we get a ward system or not. So I commend this to council.
Seconder? Councillor Ladner. Councillor Roberts.
Well, I think this is a true moment here where Councillor Sullivan has made some progress in understanding some of the problems with the at-large system. When he testified before Berger, he was still defending the at-large ballot, and which is pretty astonishing. And I think for the sake of everyone, to remind them of what it's like to go to vote in this city, I really don't have to say a whole lot more. When you have a ballot with more than 100 names, how to make heads or tails of them, how to know who anybody is or what they stand for, and what they've actually done. I think if you take a look at the Berger report, virtually everyone who came forward, in fact, Peter Ladner himself testified that the ballot always frustrated him before he got into politics. I don't know what happened after he got into politics. I guess he got smarter. But anyway, lots of people said things like the ballot looks like a telephone book, or that it's totally exasperating, it's daunting, unmanageable, it's insanity. And Berger himself concluded that since voters have no way of knowing something, in fact anything at all, about each candidate, they are not able to cast an informed vote. This point was made many times. So what I'm glad is that finally Councillor Sullivan is coming around to recognizing this. But the thing that he's yet failed to grasp is that it is not simply a matter that there's a lot of names on the ballot. That the advantage of a ward system would, yes, reduce the number of names, that each person in the city would then only have to vote for people in their own ward. That would be a great advantage. But what a ward system would also do is make sure that every neighborhood in the city is equally represented. Every neighborhood would be ensured that they get to elect their representative. By simply making it more difficult to get on the ballot, you in no way make sure that each neighborhood is represented.
This actually is a debate about the ballot and how many people are you required to be able to.
Right, but what I'm saying is that it does not, he does recommend fewer names, but it does not solve the real problems of the at-large system.
What we're dealing with...
Putting it forward as a solution to the problems of the at-large system, and I'm saying is it does not succeed.
Just let me read this for you. Be it resolved that the City of Vancouver requests that the provincial government change the Vancouver Charter to require that all persons that want to run for any elected office in the City of Vancouver be required to have 20 Vancouver residents sign their nomination form.
Yeah.
That's what we're arguing about. Okay?
And
I like where you're going.
Thank you. And I'll wind up here because I think just the point is made. I understand he's trying to reduce it, but I think it is within the context of a ward referendum on October 16th when we go to the polls. In that context, he's trying to say, hey, there's no need for...
Let me try this just one more time. Therefore, be it resolved. Yeah. It's not about wards. He didn't read in the whereases. Okay, I cut them out.
We're not going to talk about the whereases. Or the context that we have a referendum on October 16th.
No.
Okay. Your Worship, I'm gonna let this go. I just want to.
Thank you.
I want to say that
Oh, sorry. I thought you were finished. Sorry. Councillor Bass.
Mr. Mayor, for the reason you just said, I would like to move to delete the whereases, since the resolution itself has nothing to do with at-large or ward.
The whereases are not included in the motion.
Still, they create a very false...
The whereases are not included in the motion.
Okay. But as a...
The whereases are not included in the motion.
Well, they appear on this paper in front of me, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, just hold on a minute.
And I think they give a...
Mr. Clerk, would you please advise Councillor that they're not included in the motion?
Yeah, the whereases are not part of the motion. They are not moved and they are not adopted by council. It's only the resolution that is adopted.
Will the whereases, Mr. Clerk, will the whereases appear in the minutes?
They will, because they're part of the document that was before council.
Then I have a problem with adopting the resolution as it's handed to us. And I would like the minutes to
thank you. The minutes will reflect that.
So I would like to do a whereas activity.
No. No. We were just rocketing along, you know. I thought, boy, everybody had a good summer, you know.
With respect, Mr. Mayor, it seems to me that I am within my grounds to make a motion like this, especially when we have such
Mr. Clerk,
such a distortion that really doesn't have anything to do with, therefore, with the resolution itself. And I would hate to see this appear in the minutes without some registration of dissent.
Well, I think you could move a motion to disassociate yourself from the whereases.
Okay.
You could
disassociate
yourself.
The council dissociate itself from the whereas.
It's very similar to strike.
Is there a seconder for this? Councillor Woodsworth. Okay, on this motion, anybody want to discuss it? I'm not sure. I think it's that we're disassociating ourselves from the whereases.
Your Worship, perhaps it is more straightforward if you simply accept the motion to strike the whereases.
Okay.
They are not part of the motion. However,
why would
I
we
think
be doing
that's
that?
the clearest method to use. Yes, it's the
Okay,
clearest
so
method.
all those in favor of striking the whereases? All those against? We have Councillor Green, Councillor Sullivan, and Councillor Ladner against the motion. The motion carries. They will be struck. We have a procedural question coming from Councillor Roberts.
In the past, I think I have always assumed that we are dealing with the whereas. Could you please explain to me what this is procedurally for future debate?
The whereases are an explanation as to why it leads to the therefore be it resolved. But council, in adopting the whereases, is not declaring itself as adopting all of the statements made in the whereases. Having said that, I mean, I can acknowledge, I can understand council's concern. It appears that if you come to the same conclusion in the resolve, that perhaps you agree with the statements that lead up to it. Procedurally, that's not correct. However, a striking motion makes it clear, and I think council is free to do that.
In the normal course of a debate, would it be appropriate for councils to be discussing the whereases as part of the context for the final resolve?
Well, the focus should be on the resolve. Actually, I would need to check this, but I believe our procedural rules say that the whereases should not be read when the matter comes to debate. It's simply the resolve. And I think it's to the extent, it depends how far you go. This is not a motion about wards or at large, and therefore I don't think it's appropriate that the debate becomes a motion about wards at large. That it should touch on that tangentially is fine.
Thank you.
We gotta get this thing fixed. I'm trying to go back to random. I was in. Councillor Sullivan.
Yes, well, actually, I simply wanted to provide the whereases for the benefit of the council so they know some of the history.
They're gone, Councillor.
Okay.
They're gone.
Okay, I didn't even read them out, so you don't have to worry about that. But I do believe that, this will help either the ward system or the at-large system, whichever the citizens choose. And I know that it's a very, very important decision. All this will do is make it possible that currently every citizen gets 10 votes, and they're being asked to turn in those 10 votes and get back one. And many citizens want to have the option.
No, Councillor, we're not going there. No. I'm doing the same thing, telling you the same thing as I told Councillor Roberts.
I will shut up.
He's a good boy. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I'm a little taken aback. I mean, Councillor Sullivan has been on this council for quite a long time. He's gone through all sorts of elections, and I don't think once over all of these years has he ever said, this is difficult, we should limit this. I think people are frivolous. All of a sudden now, he's calling all kinds of people frivolous and people that shouldn't be on the ballot. They have to go through more hoops. All of a sudden, he's become anti-democratic. I don't quite understand why he ends up with 20. Why not 100? Why not 15? On what criteria did Councillor Sullivan all of a sudden decide there were people, frivolous people, as he said, that should be wiped off the ballot? Well, if I was Lucy the chimp, I might not think I was so.
Don't go there, Councillor.
Oh, thank you very much, Your Worship. So, I think that we, in fact, should be encouraging people to get involved in the democratic process, encouraging people to be a part of the whole system, and that's why we have the ward system in front of us. In fact, to encourage people to run, not to be cowered by the system that the MPA has chosen for so many years. So I'm glad to see that Councillor Sullivan is finally kind of coming around and changing his mind on a number of issues, and hopefully by the time the 16th of October will arrive, he'll be voting for ward.
Councillor Cadman.
I'd like to move to defer this until after October 16th. I think we've got to make sure that when we go to the provincial government and we ask for changes to our charter, that we don't do it one at a time on a series of items, but bring them together and ask for concerted changes that are where we want to go. So I think we need to know where we're going on October 16th and bring all those requests forward to the provincial government at one time rather than beginning to file requests for charter changes each week. So I'll move deferral.
Perhaps we could move this along a little faster by realizing that Shaw is not televising this and haven't been since the demonstration. So there you go. There you go. We're going to move right along, eh? So I see no further discussion on B4. Motion to defer. Seconder, Councillor Bass. Okay. Now on the motion to defer, do we have any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of deferral? Opposed? It passes the motion. Councillor Ladner, Councillor Sullivan, opposed. Late distribution. B5, Councillor Ladner.
Worship, this is the motion. I will not go through all the whereases, worthy and carefully scripted though they may be. And I'll just jump to, I'll give a little explanation. I won't read them aloud, though. It's a proposal to ask staff to investigate dedicating one lane on Point Grey Road to two-way, non-motorized travel between Alma Street and McDonald Street, and report back to council on a timetable. I have no word count. I'm an at-large
Ladies and
councillor.
gentlemen, we have another meeting that starts tonight at 7 o'clock.
Timetable, costs, and financing options with due consideration to safety for pedestrians, cyclists, runners, and residents, local traffic mobility, consultation with residents and citizens who will be affected, including running and cycling organizations, protecting parking along Point Grey Road where feasible, ultimately creating a continuous greenway between the Burrard Bridge and Jericho Beach, and other possible solutions to achieve protection for non-motorized travel along this route. This is something I've been working on for some time, and this idea has been endorsed by Better Environmentally Sound Transportation, by SPEC, by the Suzuki Foundation, by the UBC Trek Cycling Organization, and the Vancouver Area Cycling Commission, a coalition committee, I'm not sure the correct name of it, and also the Bicycle Advisory Committee of the city. It has widespread support. I have submitted this to all the community associations in that neighborhood and have had no opposition from any of them. So I think it's something that has a lot of public support. I think it makes sense. I think it's in line with our city policies of encouraging cycling and other forms of non-motorized transportation. It's a residential street. There are other places for the cars to go. I think the only issue is really where it fits into the city's agenda. And we had a memo from the city engineer today suggesting that there are other priorities and that if we did do this, it would have to go on to the 2006-2008 capital plan. I don't see it as a large capital expense, but I guess there would be some capital expenditure for some left-hand turn traffic lights and so on. So I'm happy with that, but I think just the same, the motion could go ahead and the city engineer and traffic people could let us know what the options are. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have a copy of this and none of the other councils. Do we have a deferral till we find the...
It was distributed to you.
September 28th. I have a copy.
It was part of the late distribution package.
It was submitted on time, but there was a clerical error in which
I should acknowledge that. I mean, council members need to have it in front of them, but it was a problem in my office that this didn't make it to the regular agenda. But it was distributed to members with the late package.
It might be in my box, but I don't have it. Did we not defer it?
Well, it could be deferred to Thursday.
Can we defer this to Thursday, Councillor Leonard, so all the other councillors have a copy of this?
Well, if that'll make it more democratic, or you give them to deal with it, they can think it over. I don't mind doing that.
On the deferral? No. On the deferral.
We have Mr. Rutherford here, and will you be there on Thursday? Okay, thank you. I support the deferral, and I will second the motion. But I would...
The deferral is from you, Councillor Green. Councillor Bass is seconding it. All those in favor of the deferral? Opposed? Carried unanimously. New business, inquiries, and other matters. Should I clear the board here?
No.
Why? There. Okay. Now, everybody jump back on for new business, inquiries, or other matters. Good.
Councillor Green, don't do that. One moment, please, and we'll see.
Okay, just put your hand up.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Lilly.
You're turning it on and off. When you do it repeatedly, you turn it on and off.
Councillor Louis.
I'd like to move a leave of absence to Councillor Stevenson for tonight's public hearing.
Oh.
And for tomorrow as well. For Woodward, yeah.
Seconder? Seeing nobody seconded. Councillor Woodworth seconds it. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Councillor Ladner.
Richard, I got a call from somebody who was involved with some planning in Yaletown and referring to the problems that have occurred around the relocation of the float planes in Cole Harbour. And the caller said that at the time of when the Yaletown was being redeveloped, there were thoughts of putting a tram line in there. All people who bought property there had a covenant on their property to warn them that this intrusion could occur and they should be prepared for that. And I'm wondering whether I could find out from staff if we could do something like that in Cole Harbour related to float planes and also a tram line into Cole Harbour, so that people buying property cannot turn around and say, I bought this property, I had no idea there would be float planes around me, or that there's going to be a train show up in my backyard someday. And therefore we could sidestep all these issues that we're currently having and may have in the future with a very simple procedure.
It's also in the development plan, I think. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of things. First of all, we're all aware of what a magnificent job has been done with Mole Hill in the West End. But Mole Hill residents have created, along with city staff, an incredible laneway in the back, and there's all sorts of gardens and so on that are there. And Councillor Bass and Councillor Louis and Councillor Roberts all came down to have a look at it. And they're asking that there be some way to stop the traffic, the through traffic going through that particular laneway. And we certainly could see why that would be important there, because there's a lot of pedestrian traffic, particularly in the summer when people are out in the gardens and in the lawns and so on. So I'd ask that staff, ask for memo from staff to come back with the feasibility of having some way to block the lane so that there wouldn't be a lot of through traffic, particularly, of course, with people who are trying to take shortcuts through the West End. So if we could ask staff to come back to that, I don't want to put a motion forward to do that until I hear back to the possibilities. Second, Your Worship, has to do with our fabulous hairstyles. Thank you for your involvement with the Cops for Cancer and the gay community. You challenged the gay community, and they stepped up to the plate with $5,000.
So to speak.
And we both lost our hair as a result. So you were a really good sport about it, and everyone enjoyed it, and you got a little publicity as a result. Thank you.
Yeah, it looks like everybody appreciated it was here this afternoon.
Yeah.
Councillor Roberts.
You know, I had asked earlier whether our mayor was planning on becoming a monk, and his whole this afternoon's reading.
It's entered my mind long before this meeting.
Anyway, my inquiry actually is, I too would like a memo. This is regarding the Eborn lands, and the community there. A number of residents are concerned about the future of the lands, especially with the bus depot going there and the park along the riverway, and also looking at it as a gateway to the city. And a huge number of institutions and residents, from TransLink, the Park Board, the Musqueam Band, the North Fraser Port, the airport, the Fraser Basin Council, are all involved to some extent and wanting some sort of planning process. And I've been receiving many calls about this. I'm certainly not in any position to recommend that the city be involved in it or to support it, but I would like the information back from the staff about the possibilities, whether that is something that we should be assisting, and you know what the issues are there. So if I could please have a memo back on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Yes, Your Worship. We're just in inquiries right now. Is that correct? We're not.
New business, inquiries, or other matters?
Okay, a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to move a leave of absence for Councillor Sullivan for September the 29th and October the 5th. Both the evenings of both days.
Seconder. Councillor Ladner. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
And I want Sam's mother to know that I did that because I like them too. The other thing, Your Worship, is I have a quick question, and that's how our business license review panel members are selected. I noticed that 3 of us today, Councillor Ladner, Lewis, and myself, sat on a business review panel, and there's another one coming up on October the 6th, I think it is, and the same 3 people are on it, and there's 10 of us.
You're good.
I guess we are. I guess we've showed our expertise with them. But that can't possibly be true. But anyway, I'd just like to get somebody to clarify how that works. I'm sure it's from availability or something. The third thing, and I know we're very rushed, but I'll just take a quick moment. There were 4 of us in Barcelona, 4 of us for the World Urban Forum, and I was there the week earlier with UNITAR, which is a section of the United Nations that deals with communications and capacity raising skills, and a group that's just about to come into Canada and sees Vancouver as the most important part. They also want to work with us when we host the World Urban Forum in 2006, and one of the things that they're talking about is they now have the ability to do simultaneous translation across the web in any language in the world. And they see that as a great way of really bringing the world into the World Urban Forum in Vancouver. The other things that when I was there, Councillor Ladner and I went and took a tour of the facilities they had at the Olympics. They're one of the places that really touts the fact that they did a great job on the Olympics. I was later able to go and visit the Olympic Village site and look at how that works in a very similar setting to what we'll be doing. Met with Joe Fontana, the mayor, the minister in charge of the World Urban Forum, and also the Minister of Housing, where we had the opportunity to discuss some housing that we're trying to get here in Vancouver that I think most of us would really like to see. And we met with the mayor close there to talk to him about the issues around hosting the World Urban Forum and the Olympics. It was very successful, I think. I think all of us, I can't speak for anyone else because we haven't had a chance to talk, but I think we all enjoyed it. We all learned something. I think there were some very negative lessons also in the way that Barcelona didn't include itself in the way I would like to have seen it in the World Urban Forum. But it was a great experience, and I think we're going to learn a lot from it. Mayor Close is quite a supporter of Vancouver and really is planning to come here to give us some advice, too, on those issues.
Okay. Councillor Bass.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move a leave of absence for Tim Lewis tonight.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Green, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Councillor Lewis.
I'd like to leave for Councillor Bass Tuesday. So I continue?
Continue.
Tuesday, October the 5th, council meeting only, the afternoon only, for personal business, and evening.
And do I have a seconder for that?
October the 5th, Tuesday, October the 5th.
Okay, Councillor Cabin, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Councillor Sullivan.
Oh.
I'm not touching it here. I'm just going to the next one.
I think Councillor Woodsworth, was accidentally dropped off. But
let's finish this.
Okay. I've been contacted by members of the cruise ship industry, James McMillan, Pride of Vancouver, and some others. He and other commercial boat owners serving the tourist industry are being evicted from their berth near the convention center. And I would like to ask the staff if they could look into this to see if it's possible to facilitate a space where they can continue to do business during the construction of the convention center.
Thank you.
Your Worship,
Councillor Ladner.
if I may just give council members a word of advice. On the system, if you hit the space bar to put yourself on the speakers list, do not hit it again when you're finished speaking. The mayor controls that, and that's what's happening is you're hitting the space bar to take yourself off, and the mayor hits the next, and it skips someone. And I've noticed it happen a few times. So use it to put yourself on, but don't touch it when you're finished speaking. The mayor controls that.
See, I'm not challenged. Councillor Ladner.
I don't know if this has been dealt with, but I was away at the last meeting, but I received, as did others, I believe, a message from the project coordinator for van and car and van pooling for the city, noting that as a result of a freedom of information or privacy issue, or possible privacy issue, we can no longer actively connect people for carpools and go out and find their postal codes and suggest them they might want to carpool with somebody else. And the result is that we have 5 or 6 vehicles, he says, that were purchased for carpooling at the cost of $312,000 that are collecting dust at the Manitoba yards. And this does not sound to me like a very good use of the public's money. And I'd like to find out if we are actually going to be able to go back to our active matching of people, and if not, if there are plans for disposing of these vehicles.
That's a very good question. Councillor Roberts.
I'd like to request a leave of absence for Councillor Woodsworth on civic business on October 7th for the Planning and Environment Committee.
Second. Second by Councillor Cadman. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. And last but certainly not least, Councillor Woodsworth.
Thank you. I wanted to rise to speak as I was very honored to be part of the Canadian delegation to the World Urban Forum along with Councillors Cadman, Councillors Green and Councillors Ladner. We went there to just see what a wonderful event the World Urban Forum was, and the fact that we launched it here in Vancouver in '86 gave it special meaning, and that we were going to come back and be ready for the World Urban Forum in June of '06 in Vancouver was also a great reason for us to be part of the delegation, which was led by Joe Fontana and Stephen Owen, and Michael Harcourt was also a significant player, as well as Peter Oberlander, who are coordinating our Vancouver World Urban Forum plans. I was asked to be there to launch the document that the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the Women in Cities International have just completed, called A City Tailored to Women, and I would like to give it to the mayor because I think that this is a key document. It's called A City Tailored to Women, and as part of the panel that I was on, a group of French women have asked that a city somewhere in the world agree to become the ideal city for women. So I'm hoping we can take that forward in the near future. As well, at the same time, there was a World Youth Congress that the Vancouver youth were very actively engaged in, and they presented their document, A Child and Youth Friendly City, which we hope will be a precursor to how we develop the World Urban Forum 06 in Vancouver. And we were able to bring up issues regarding the World Peace Forum, which will overlap and dovetail with the World Urban Forum. So it was quite an exciting conference. We met mayors and councillors from all over the world, and I was especially honored to meet with the Minister of Cities for Brazil, Minister Dutra, and talk to him about the FAL, or the Forum of Local Authorities, which is doing incredible work in developing cities that are dedicated to social inclusion, and one of the vehicles they've used is participatory budgets. And I discovered that in South Africa, in Uganda, in the Philippines, and in Brazil, they are using a gender-dedicated participatory budget that I hope that we can take a look at in terms of getting women included in our cities. Finally, after that, I flew back and then went on as the delegate on the executive committee of the Union of BC Municipalities, and I was very pleased to be able to accept on behalf of the City of Vancouver the Honorable Mention Award dedicated to the City of Vancouver for its Corporate Climate Change Action Plan, and I think I should present it here to Councillor Cadman and acknowledge Dave Redberg for their work on climate change, and they're looking forward to giving us more awards in the future.
That would be Dave squared.
Finally, I just wanted to say that I know people have been paying particular attention to our pizzas and our possibility of having awards after October 16th, and that if anybody would like to have a speaker come and speak to them about awards, please do contact any of the councillors around this table. And next Wednesday there will be a forum on women and wards, and they can get in touch with us about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Lilly.
Your Worship, just to follow up on what Councillor Ladner had brought up, I also received the memo, and this memo was dated August of 2003, and it seemed odd that, I'm assuming it's the same one, that it was in the system for that period of time, and so I did some investigation. I think it falls into the jurisdiction of Mr. Redberg, and I referred it on to you. I was wondering whether we can get an update of where that's at since you're here, rather than having a memo.
This is an issue that we're working on in terms of the whole TDM program. Two of the issues that we're scheduled to report back on, I think at the next meeting, our committee is dealing with the paid parking issue, as well as reporting back with the transit passes. We have met with the unions on those issues, and we can bring back their position as well as the staff recommendations on those. As well, there's an issue of the carpooling, which is the way it's charged, and how we recover our cost on that, whether it's for vehicles that are in the fleet or new vehicles specifically assigned for van pooling, and we need to sort that out with the unions as well. I'm not aware of this issue with regard to postal codes or confidentiality issues, and I'll certainly look into that. We're certainly interested in forming some new carpools. We have vehicles available for that, but we also need to work out the cost recovery on that as well.
So is there 5 vehicles waiting to be used?
I don't know. I'd have to check.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Green.
It's for Mr. Rudberg. Mr. Rudberg, the carpooling reminded me that some time ago I put forward a motion that we start actually dedicating parking spaces for the car co-op. And I understand that that's actually going ahead, but have we received a memo back or anything on what's going on?
As I recall, I think some spaces have been assigned on street for that purpose, but we can get back to you with the numbers and locations.
If you would, because I actually ran into someone who told me it was happening. I hadn't heard, so appreciate it.
Councillor Woodsworth.
I just wanted to announce that Friday at night and Saturday all day at the Vancouver Public Library, there's Media Democracy Day with wonderful speakers and films, and I hope people can attend.
Thank you. I'd just like to, I take it these have to either be journalism students, is that correct? From where? Yeah, or masochists. It's only, those are actually they're one and the same, I believe, even when you graduate. So I want to thank you for being here. Normally we don't have the row that we started out with here today. Those were supporters. And so we thank you, and I hope that you were able and combines both the aspects of peer dance and storytelling of the Barada Natian dance form. The dancer will perform in the traditional costume of the style. Welcome. You. And I just would like to point out that Ishwarya's grandmother is seated over in the corner there. I noticed above me are a large number of future politicians, and I just wondered which school is everybody from here? Welcome. Welcome to your city council. Everybody be in their best behavior now. Council is required to meet in camera later this day. The reasons and authority under the Vancouver Charter are listed in the agenda. Would Councillor Lewis, as Deputy Mayor, move that motion? May I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Cadman. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Items arising from the in-camera meeting of November 16th. Council approved the appointment of Liz Lindsay to the Peace and Justice Committee. Minutes 1 are the minutes of the regular council meeting following the Transportation and Traffic meeting of November 2nd. Councillor Bass, as chair, do you have any comments?
Traffic and Transportation Traffic Committee on November 2nd. First item was Clark Drive at 6th Avenue. We approved a left-hand turn bay. And the second item was city employee trip reduction strategies, transportation demand management report back. Council approved the City of Vancouver's participation in the TransLink Employer Transit Pass Program to begin April 1st, 2005 as part of employee trip reduction strategies at the City of Vancouver. Council directed staff to report back 1 year after the implementation date on participation levels and ongoing costs and resources required to continue the program. This program would apply to all regular full-time and regular part-time employees of the city. In addition, the Park Board, Police Board, and Library Board are encouraged to adopt transportation demand management proposals for their work sites. With that, I move these minutes.
Second. Second by Councillor Woodsworth. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Minutes 2 are the minutes of the regular council meeting following the City Services and Budget meeting of November 4th. Councillor Lewis, as chair, do you have any comments?
Good afternoon, Your Worship. There were 3 items on the agenda. The first item was the 2004 other grant request. Wildlife Rescue Association of the City Council approved the grant to this association. The second item on the agenda was the 2004 celebration grant recommendations, fall deadline. Council approved celebration grants to a number of organizations for community-based festivals, celebrations, and parades. The third and final item on the agenda was a rent review for the foreshore lots in Stanley Park, subleased to the Vancouver Rowing Club. Council approved the grant in the form of a rent subsidy to the Vancouver Rowing Club for the period September the 1st of 04 to August the 30th of 07. And for those comments, I move approval of the minutes.
Seconder. Second by Councillor Bass. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Minutes 3 are the minutes of the regular council meeting following the Planning and Environment meeting of November 4th. Councillor Roberts, as chair, do you have any comments?
With the 3 items dealt with there was 2 warnings to prospective purchasers. One was at 1300 Richard Street and one was at 4896 Earl Street. Council directed that a 3360 notice be filed against the title to these properties at both 1300 Richard Street and 4896 Earl Street to warn prospective purchasers of bylaw violations. And the last item was regarding the operating budget, the August review. Council received the report on the August review for information and directed staff to report on the status of the operating budget on August 31st each year rather than September 30th to give more time to consider the matter. And with that, I move these motions to be adopted as well.
Seconder. Councillor Bass. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Minutes 4, the minutes of the business license hearing held November 4th. Councillor Stevenson, as chair, do you have any comments? Okay, would you move the approval of the minutes? Seconder. Councillor Bass. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Minutes 5 are the minutes of the regular council meeting held November 16th. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, would someone move adoption? Moved by Councillor Cadman, seconded by Councillor Stevenson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Minute 6 are the minutes of the public hearing held November 16th. Any corrections to the minutes? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We need a motion to go into committee of the whole. Okay, we'll move by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Woodsworth. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Council will now consider the consent agenda items. We have communication, administrative reports A1 to A15, and policy reports P1 to P3. Staff has requested to withdraw report P3 as some new information has come forward from the College of Pharmacies, and the report will be rescheduled early in the new year. We have a request to speak to policy report P2. If council agrees, we will defer consideration of the report to the Standing Committee of City Services and Budget meetings on this Thursday, December 2nd, to hear the speaker. Councillor Roberts.
Items 10, 12, and 14.
Oh, no, I'm not finished yet. I just thought you were wanting to talk to these. Okay. Okay, the communication has a recommendation for appointments to the GVRD for 2005, and the other reports have recommendations from officials for council consideration. Council may adopt the recommendations for the reports collectively in a single motion. Does any member wish to hold any of these for debate, separate vote, or because of conflict of interest? Councillor Roberts.
Items 8 and, items 8, 10, 12, and 14.
Thank you.
P1.
P1. Councillor Wordsworth.
8, 2, and 15, 14.
I'm sorry?
2, and 15.
8-2, okay. No, P2 was deferred. We had a request to speak to P2, and so we're going to push it through. But A2 is not deferred. Seeing no, are there any further? Seeing no further, then, would someone move adoption of the recommendations before council containing the communication and reports from officials with the exceptions of P2, 3, A2, A10, A12, A14, and P1? Moved by Councillor Louis. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. The following reports have been approved on consent. A1, general amendments to the Vancouver building bylaw. A3, A3, capital grant for Kawasa Neighborhood House. A4, use of city-owned property located at 150 Dunsmuir Street. A5, evaluation of universal accessibility in city's off-street parking facilities. A6, approval of council initiative, Chinatown BIA renewal. A7, approval of council initiative, Commercial Drive BIA renewal. A8, approval of council initiative, Marpole BIA renewal. A9, approval of council initiative, Strathcona BIA renewal. But just so you know, up in the top there, BIA is a Business Improvement Association. A11, third quarter council travel and training report. A13, expansion of the Champlain Heights Community Center. A15, business license hearing panels for December 2nd and 14. P2, text amendment to the parking bylaw, street access. You're right, it is put over. I'll just cross that out here, okay. And 3 is proposed amendment to, and that's withdrawn, right? Okay. Okay. A2. Councillor Wordsworth?
I'm standing to move recommendation A2, which states that council approve a 3-year continuation of the Carnegie Outreach Program, 2005-2007, at current budget of 300,000 with particular priority for expanded daytime hours to assist street people in connecting with services and to support work attached to the homelessness action plan and to the further development of low threshold training and employment opportunities through initiatives such as the Vancouver Agreement Employment Strategy, and I would like to speak to this issue. I'd like to really commend the staff and commend this council for its work on homelessness issues. And I'd like to draw people's attention to The Economist, dated November 20th, 2004. Now this is a significant magazine that is an international magazine that usually does not address itself to issues at a city level. However, this issue has an article called The Mean Streets of Arcadia, Vancouver's Homelessness. And it specifically says that most Vancouverites love it when, as frequently happens, their city gets rated as one of the nicest places in the world in which to live. And then it goes on to say, most critics blame British Columbia's mean-spirited Liberal government for social services cuts in its 3-year drive to eliminate its deficit. In more sober language, the city's action plan, in effect, does the same, documenting the provincial government's tightening of welfare access, cuts in subsidized housing, and failure to provide services for the mentally ill. Quote, to deal with a deficit crisis, says Darrell Burnham, head of an agency helping the mental ill, the provincial government, have created a long-term social crisis that won't be turned around in a year or two. I would like to commend Carnegie Community Center for stepping in and really trying to address some of these immediate problems, and I'd like to request that we work strongly with the provincial government to urge them to roll back the cuts they've made that have so impacted on our community.
Councillor Ladner.
Well, Your Worship, I want to thank Councillor Woodworth for reading from The Economist. He didn't get to my quote in there. I was in that article. I think I'm
Does this look like a debate here?
I would like to speak against this motion, and I know I've been in this unenviable position before, but I would like to explain why and say that it has nothing to do with any intent to not deal with homelessness or any of the grave problems that are besetting the downtown east side. My question is why, well, I have a number of questions. Why would we be approving funding for 3 years for a program when we don't know what the situation is going to be next year and the year after, when we know that this program has been changing its mandate since it began. It began as a way to deal with a lack of a contact center, which is now established behind the Carnegie Center. It began with a way to deal with a lack of a safe injection site, which is now established. And now it's got a new mandate, which is actually quite nebulous. Priority to expanded hours to assist street people in connecting with services and to support work attached to the Homelessness Action Plan. I'm not sure what that work would be, but I know that most of the Homelessness Action Plan, as Councillor Woodsworth so accurately pointed out, depends on activity and funding and change of heart by other levels of government. And I'm not sure that this program is actually going to address that. Furthermore, I have a problem with dealing with this program out of context. There are obviously good people in this program doing good work. There's no question about that. I was down on the downtown east side myself last Saturday night. I was asking people about it. I got at the safe injection site, they praised the people from this program. They said they come in, they bring people in there, and they're good people. That's not what I'm challenging. What I am challenging is whether we are getting $300,000 worth of value from this program. And I want to just draw your attention to another program, which is also hurting for funding, which brings other kinds of value, which I think is the kind of thing we should be evaluating this program against. The award-winning Buddy program, which pairs young immigrants with Canadian youth to prevent them from falling into crime and drugs. If it were to have this $300,000, in fact only $280,000, it could help 1,000 children at 5 centers, including the Raycam Community Center, Kawasa Neighborhood House, Frog Hollow Neighborhood House, Collingwood Neighborhood House, and Thunderbird Community Center, and keep them out of a life of crime, deal with the prevention right off the top, and I would wager have a greater impact on the health, safety, and issues that are besetting the downtown east side than the program at Carnegie. As I mentioned last time this program came up, this is an outreach program. There are 46 other outreach programs in the downtown east side. We have no information here about how this interacts with them, except the comment that we are being asked or expected to improve coordination among outreach programs as part of the homelessness plan. And adding outreach programs and improving coordination to me are two different things. I'm also distressed that the last time we approved this, we asked this program to go out and find some funding partners. And they have not been able to do that. They indicate that they have plans to do that. They are working on doing that with a number of organizations, but they haven't done that. And I suspect that the reason they haven't done that is that the other funding agencies have realized that the City of Vancouver is willing to pick up this service because we've done it in the past, and because this council is prone to funding initiatives from the downtown east side without the amount of scrutiny that we give to other programs in the city. And they've decided that why should they fund it? Because we'll do it for them. So effectively, we are going against our policy of picking up downloaded services from other levels of government. And I think if there were evidence that this was a much-needed program that fits exactly in with the Vancouver Agreement and the homelessness plan and everything else, that there would be other funders at the table with us, helping us with this program. So I think it's very important to distinguish between the intent of this program, which is entirely worthy, the people doing this program who are entirely worthy, and the results that it's getting, which are entirely worthy, and look instead at the scale of those results and the value for the money and what we could do if we spent that money somewhere else, because believe it or not, we do not have unlimited funds. And I think that the city manager has given us a good recommendation, which is to put the request for funding to the 2005 budget review process, look at it against all the other options that we will be having under the Homelessness Action Plan and various other initiatives, and see if then it looks like the best way to spend our money, and if it is, by all means, let's spend the money. So I would be voting against the recommendation on the hope that we could follow the city manager's recommendation on this. Thank you.
Well, Your Worship, as I'm very confident, very hopeful, a majority of this progressive council will be voting for the motion. I'm going to be voting for the motion because I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that providing some security to organizations such as Carnegie is a good thing. Providing a 3-year funding commitment is a good thing. And I have to say that I find it ironic that whenever we're talking about a very, very small amount of money to a very, very good organization, 10-year security of contract, security of funding beyond a 1-year horizon is absolutely out of the question for Councillor Ladner. But when we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar contract for something that isn't needed to an arms manufacturer like SNC-Lavalin, Councillor Ladner says that 1 year would be far too short. It should be 30 years. It should be 35 years. Let's give SNC-Lavalin billions of dollars. But when it's to deal with homelessness in his own neighborhood, 1 year is the farthest he'll go, and even then, only if we scrutinize and scrutinize and scrutinize to a degree that we would never do if it was a multi-billion-dollar contract to an arms manufacturer. Now, Councillor Ladner has suggested that there may be other organizations more deserving of money. I would welcome Councillor Ladner's fresh, additional motion, not in place of this motion, but in addition. Why don't we fund them both and make the world a better world? Why does it always have to be that in Councillor Ladner's world, the poor have to fight amongst themselves so that only one ends up getting the funding? Let's fund Carnegie. Let's fund Carnegie because anybody that knows anything about Carnegie knows that they do deliver far beyond the amount of this very small amount of funding. Let's make a wise decision. Let's do what a progressive city council would do.
Thank you. Councillor Wordsworth, you've already spoken. I'll come back to you. Councillor Bass?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Ladner, I think you underestimate the taxpayers in the city of Vancouver. What we're asked to do today is to spend 55 cents per person in the city of Vancouver on a program of outreach to help the homeless. I think actually the taxpayers who have homes in the city of Vancouver would be quite willing to do that. It's not an easy thing to do. The people who do this deserve a bit of security, and it's very important, I think, that we extend for 3 years some security in doing that. I also thank you for identifying the difference between the NPA and COPE. The NPA would try to figure out what we do with 55 cents per person in Vancouver to help the homeless. And COPE would be willing to spend, as Councilor Lewis said, 55 cents on this program and some pennies on the one you suggested, so that we do an effective job with helping those who are less privileged. I would like to ask staff for when you come by next year, I think it's important that we get a little more of a feeling of the output so that all of us can appreciate the growth in the effectiveness of the program. So would you please give us some idea of not only the contacts, we have a good reading of the contacts that you've had in the past year, but let's also find out what happened to those people in terms of where they went, a bit more follow-up in terms of, rather than just the initial reading. So we have some sense of the services they ended up receiving and what happened to them. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I do believe Councillor Bass is incorrect about this, portraying this politically. In fact, I remember starting this program, voting for it in 1999. That's when it was started by a previous government. The idea was that we wanted to develop the Vancouver Agreement, which would deal with these issues in a comprehensive way. We recognized that the other levels of government were not fulfilling their obligations. This is in their mandate. So we went into the breach and did what we could to establish this. The idea was that we would get other levels of government to fund this. And in fact, the feds did come on board, and they were involved. Health Canada, I believe, another ministry for the crime prevention was involved. And then the provincial government got involved, but they took on different aspects of it, like the health contact center. They got the community health centers going, the life skills center, the safe injection site. All of those were trying to fulfill the original emphasis of what we were doing here. Right now, this program now does have quite a number of focuses which are kind of hard to keep track of. There's certainly a health element, there's an education element, and an employment element. And I do believe that there is a time when we, once we start these things, we need to hand them off. And I think that if we do keep funding them, we will not have the other levels of government come in and take over this responsibility. In fact, they have taken over many of the areas that originally weren't there, and that's what this was intended to do. So I'm going to support Councillor Ladner. It's not because that it's difficult for this particular group. It is because I think we need to hand off this stuff to the mandate of the governments that are responsible. Thank you.
I'll speak, and then Councillor Woodward. I'm going to be